Don't stop.
Hi, thanks so much for joining me on the Everything and Anything in the Big Gay podcast. I am Zach Randalls-Friedman, your host of the show. And before I get into my amazing guest today, I wanted to tell you a little bit about a few of my friends. And the reason why is because I just spent a weekend with a few friends, and we talked about similar things that we always talk about, so I'm the one that's been in a relationship the longest out of all my friends, even my straight friends, I think. And I am the only one, I think, except for one other couple, that is in a monogamous relationship. The rest are open or my friends are single. So here's the deal. My single friends, a majority of them do want a relationship, but they're so burned out on trying to find the right person. But sometimes I think they do find the right person. And I'm wondering, are they just looking for the chase? Are they looking for the thrill of trying to find somebody? Because as much effort as they put into going on these apps, and not just like Grindr looking for sex or whatever the other apps are that are like just looking for hookups, but like Hinge is the app that my friends go on when they're trying to find a date. And I feel like that they find people that they like, but quickly like find one thing wrong with them and then that's it. Before they even meet them. Like on the app, they're like, nope, he's wearing, I don't know. I see him wearing black socks with white shoes. I don't know. That's a bad example, but you know what I mean? Like there's always a little something, no matter how minor it is. It's like, well, get to know them. Like you can fix the black socks with white shoes. Like you can fix that. You can teach them how to dress if they don't know how to do it. But I do think a lot of them are just kind of scared of being alone. And it's not like being alone. My friends all get lots of hookups, lots of sex. I have one friend that gets sex multiple times a week from different people. You know, he's on all the PrEP and Doxy and all the other things that you need to be on. But I don't think that they are ready for a relationship. Most of them are not. And let me tell you why. So I kind of thought this in the back of my head, but when I was with my friends this weekend, one of my friends said, oh yeah, I said, dude, you don't have anybody you can set him up with? And he said, no, because he's not ready. I'm not going to waste somebody's time. I'm like, what do you mean he's not ready? He's like, whenever he's ready for a relationship, I may have somebody, but I don't have anybody because he's not ready. And I kind of like reflected and thought about that for a few days. Not like ongoing for a few days, but it kind of came in and out of my mind. And I'm like, maybe he's not ready because he just got out of a really long-term relationship. So maybe he's not. Does he want just somebody there to come home to? Maybe that's it. Because he's not looking for somebody to go on vacation with him because he goes on like lots of vacations a year. I don't know how he has this much vacation time. And good for him for doing it. And he takes advantage of every day he has. And he does amazing trips. And he goes away with friends. And he has a great time. And that's amazing. But so I don't think it's that he's missing. He's lots of friends also. So he's not lonely from that aspect. I think he's just like, maybe the thought of a relationship is what he wants. He wants that chase of finding somebody. But then I feel like when he finds somebody, like it either goes one of two ways. Either he finds somebody and he finds something immediately wrong with them, even sometimes before they meet, looking at his pictures online or a text conversation, and that's it, the guy's out. Or he finds somebody, he talks to them for like 2 to 3 weeks, texting back and forth. They've exchanged phone numbers. They're off the app. They make plans to meet up. The guy cancels once, cancels twice, cancels a third time for whatever reason because people are busy. And then completely like ghosts after that. Like no more texting. And my friend is like texting back saying like, are you okay? Nothing. You could say, did you die? If somebody has your phone, like let me know that this guy died, and zero. Won't respond at all. The other scenario that happens is that he meets somebody, talks to them for a week or so on Hinge, and then goes to text, and then meets them, goes out a few times with them. They end up really like hitting it off. My friend tells me, I think that I really, really like this guy. Like, I think this could be the one. I'm like, oh, really? Yeah. And then like clockwork, 3 weeks later, he's like, he told me he just wants to be friends. I'm like, what? Like, what happened? He goes, I don't know. I think they were like on the verge of being lesbians almost and talking about moving in together or something. So maybe my friend's moving too fast. I'm not sure. But this is what I don't understand. These guys that ghost my friends, why do you waste 2 or 3 weeks of texting and talking and sending like dick pics and stuff? And it's really you because your face is in. I've seen the picture. Your face is there and it's your dick. And it's the picture that matches, unless like the whole thing, you're a complete like catfish where it's not even you at all, which I just thought about that. Maybe I should tell my friend, like, you need to FaceTime them in order to make sure who you're talking to right up front. I have never thought about that until right now. So maybe the guy that he was talking to for 2 to 3 weeks that completely ghosted him, maybe they are not really who they say they are. They've stolen a picture from somebody else's profile and got pictures of the guy and stuff. And like, they're just pretending to be this person just because they're lonely. That could be it. I could have just solved this whole mystery for a lot of people. So if you are dating, if you're talking with somebody online and it's going great and you've never like FaceTime them or anything, FaceTime them because maybe they are just not the person who they say they are. It could be a 75-year-old woman that's sitting back because she's bored and like texting gay men. Who knows? Like the crazy things could happen. What I also want to do is I want to take my friend's phone and look at his text to see at what point they dropped off. Because there's something that he said that they dropped off. Or the guy, what I really need to do is look at the text for the guy that he actually met in person and was dating for 2 to 3 weeks. And then the guy's like, nope, I'm done. I need to see like what happened. What did my friend say? Because this happens multiple times. It's a pattern that's happening. So what is he saying? Like I had a friend one time that was, I swear, I'm not even kidding and exaggerating about this number. He probably went on 75 or more in-person interviews or Zoom, then in-person, got all the way to the last round of interviews, went maybe 4 or 5 interviews for some of these jobs that he went for. And when he got to the last person, they called him back the next day and said, no, we're not hiring you. And I'm like, and me and his boyfriend would text each other and say, what could he be doing wrong? And I would coach him on how to do the interviews. And I'm like, just do what I say. Like, because most of the time when I would go on interviews, there's very rare instances where I have not gotten the job from going once I get the interview, I usually get the job. So I don't really know like what he was doing other than he is just kind of a fucking idiot. So I mean, now I know why they didn't hire him because he actually did work for me for a while, twice, and yeah, he was. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, we're not going to go there anymore. But I need to relay this newfound information in my head to my friend saying, as soon as you have a little interest in somebody that you meet on Hinge, FaceTime them. Because if they don't want to FaceTime, then that means they're not who they say they are. Even if you don't have to like FaceTime them every day. One time you need a 2-minute conversation to confirm they are who they say they are and that they match the picture. Because also they could be that person, but that could have been their picture from 15 or 20 years ago. So they could have no hair and varicose veins and be somebody completely different than they are in the picture. So all the people that are dating somebody, and if you're getting catfished or you're getting ghosted, before you meet, that's why. They're not that person that you see. I'm telling you. Take my advice. FaceTime them. If you like them after the third day, say, let's FaceTime for a minute. I want to show you, say you want to show them your dog or your cat, or, oh, I got this new plant I just bought. I want to show it to you. Or tell me what you think about this shirt I'm wearing. FaceTime them. And if they say no, don't ever talk to them again. That's when you ghost them. Yep. I just solved so many people's problems. Good for me. Anyway, my guest today is Thais Gibson. Really, really, really amazing woman. She talks about relationships also. We are not all broken, and you can rewire yourself. And her and I really get into deep dive about this, that we are conditioned, and there's things that happen to us in our lives, and they can be fixed. And people struggle in relationships, which is one of the reasons why I did this intro about my friends and relationships. But you can heal. Even if you've had like a crappy relationships in the past, you've been abused by not a relationship, by friends or family. I'm not talking like physical abuse, but mental abuse. You've just had kind of, you're avoiding people, you're being super clingy. Like all these things are why people struggle in relationships. And me and Thais kind of go through all this. She is a master at this, and I'm so excited for you to hear this interview. So thanks for sticking around in this long intro, but the interview that you're going to hear with Thais is amazing, and it's worth sticking around. So thanks so much for listening. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining me today. I have a brand new guest that you have not met, and we are going to have such an interesting conversation, and I'm excited to welcome Thais Gibson to my podcast. Thanks for joining.
Thank you so much for having me. Excited to chat with you.
So tell my audience just a little bit about who you are and about what you do, because I've read some amazing things that you help people do.
Thank you. Yeah, so I am the founder of the Personal Development School. I first spent about 7 years prior to launching the school working in private practice with people, and then sort of kept working with people at the beginning of our online programs. And then eventually got too busy and had to sort of let go of seeing clients one-to-one or seeing couples. But I'm a counselor and coach by trade, and have just always been really interested in how to help people rewire their neural networks in their brain. There's patterns that they adopt from conditioning in childhood and how that shows up in their adult relationships. So that ended up focusing me a lot in the attachment space, where we go into people's different attachment styles and how to heal and become securely attached. And I definitely arrived in that work because I was insecurely attached, and I had a lot of relationship problems, and I saw a lot of relationship problems growing up. And I just remember thinking, I don't want to keep playing out on autopilot the patterns that were ingrained in me. And I wanted to have some sort of say or control over, like, hey, I have a different output and future for my life. Because I definitely saw some big ones growing up. And so that definitely led me down to doing the work on myself, and then having a lot of really profound breakthroughs and changes, and just wanting to share that and put that out to the world, and help people know that they could also overcome things that might have been difficult from their past too.
And basically when you're helping somebody rewire themselves, you can do that in 90 days?
Yeah, we go through 90-day programs for people. Yeah, and we cover different pillars. So there's different ways to heal your attachment style. I'm sure we'll get into all the different parts of the attachment styles, but we all have core wounds based on our attachment styles. So some people are more afraid of being abandoned, alone, excluded, rejected. Other people are more afraid of being trapped, helpless, powerless, shameful or weak. Some people are more afraid of betrayal. So we have these wounds, and I always give people the analogy that that's sort of your own personal version of the bear in the woods. Like if you were to go into the woods tomorrow and see a bear and then run from the bear, and then, thank goodness you're safe, but you have to go back into the woods the next day. Well, your mind would keep projecting out the likelihood of seeing the bear. You'd hear the trees move and you'd be like, the bear, it's coming again.
Yeah.
So we're wired to hang on to negative things more than positive. You don't tell your friends after you got chased by a bear, like, oh, I saw the most beautiful flowers when the bear was chasing me. You remember like the bear and its teeth. So we're wired to hang on to negative things more and then project them back out onto our world. And that's great if it's a bear, but it's not great if you felt abandoned as a child, or you felt betrayed growing up, or you felt trapped. Then we project that onto all of our adult relationships and assume that that will be the case. And then we jump to all these conclusions, and then our thoughts go wild, and we think of all the worst case scenarios based on those core imprints or core wounds. And then we also end up behaving in ways to try to cope with it. So if you feel really, afraid of abandonment, maybe you'll cling too much and accidentally push somebody away. Or if you're afraid of being trapped, you might stonewall all the time and sabotage your relationship. So we have all of these things that kind of spring off of the core wound. And what we essentially do over these 90-day segments are help you rewire your core wounds. You're not born with them. You can repetition and emotion in the brain over time until it fires and wires neural networks. And we can actually rewire them. And I'll share a tool at the end for how to do that if you'd like. And then once we've rewired our core wounds, we learn to meet our unmet needs from childhood. So trauma, in the words of Dr. Gabor Mate, are the things that happened that shouldn't have happened, like abuse, for example.
Yep.
They're also the things that didn't happen that should have in a perfect world. Like if you were neglected growing up, in a perfect world, you would have had more, presence or attunement from your parents.
And it doesn't even, does it have to be only something that happened in childhood? Like if you were in an abusive relationship in your 20s, is that something also, that you would help people kind of get past?
It's an excellent question. The answer is of course. So conditioning is always happening. So the vast majority of our conditioning is deepest in our childhood because our brain is producing more alpha and theta brain waves. And what that means is that we're hypersuggestible. Our subconscious mind is just like taking in information. And our subconscious mind is sort of the warehouse of our conditioning. And it's responsible for 95 to 97% of all of our beliefs and our thoughts and our emotions and our choices. And our conscious mind, which is our logical thinking self, is only responsible for 3 to 5%. So all the time when we say things like, I am going to set a New Year's resolution, I'm going to start that new business, or I'm going to hit the gym every day, and we say those things, and then we don't start the business, or then we don't keep up with our goals in some capacity. It's because they're just conscious mind goals, and we haven't actually ingrained our subconscious mind to get on board just yet. And so what ends up happening is we sabotage things, but there's no actual such thing as sabotage. We're not waking up saying, I'm going to sabotage my life today. What we experience as self-sabotage is just a form of cognitive dissonance. Our conscious mind wants one thing, our subconscious has different conditioning that's moving us in a different direction and prioritizing other things. And then that push-pull that we experience is the result of the conscious and subconscious working against each other. And your conscious mind can't outwill your subconscious mind either. It can only rewire it. So I take people through all the healing pieces. We go through your core wounds and your unmet needs and regulating your nervous system and learning new communication and boundary patterns. So those are the 5 pillars. And we do them all at the subconscious level. And it only takes roughly 21 days when you're in a suggestible state and really lacing things with emotion, which we can get into, to rewire neural networks in your brain. So we can really change a lot of those pillars, and some of them overlap over time. But like sometimes you're doing 2 pillars at once, but you can really rewire these root issues that cause you to be insecurely attached to begin with.
And we'll be right back. Okay, and now back to the show. And what about kids? Because, I think kids can be so mean. Like elementary school kids can be so mean to each other sometimes. So what if a kid is like being, bullied and stuff, and they were bullied when they were a child, and those are like things that they bring with them? Is that like another example of something that you would help somebody with?
Exactly. So conditioning, we have the most in childhood. We are always being conditioned. So anything we're exposed to through repetition and emotion conditions us. A bad relationship as an adult 100% can change our attachment style. Especially if it's really toxic or abusive or, any of that. And then also our attachment style can be shifted and shaped by anything we're exposed to through repetition. So you could have a relatively stable home, get bullied a lot as a child, and then make that mean that I'm not good enough, I'm disliked, I'm rejected, I'm unsafe around people. And that's going to, as an adult, inform how you try to attach and be the fears and triggers that come up for you. And that might make you a little more anxious, or maybe you have those wounds and then you're scared. So you're kind of hot and cold and you might be fearful avoidance. So you can get into how to discover which one, but yeah, absolutely. To your point, anything from repetition and emotion that's happening to us consistently will condition us.
Yeah. I mean, my friends that have kids tell me about things that, and the reason I say kids are mean is because I hear about like what happens on social media with my friends' kids, about how kids are like bullying each other online now with social media. And I'm like, it's horrible what some of these kids do to other kids. It's
Right.
What's tell me a story, or obviously I know you can't say names or anything, but tell me like one of the things that your success stories about somebody that came in and was, I don't want to say a total disaster, but really had some issues, and you kind of helped change their life.
The first person I always think of is this one student that we had, and she was so sweet. So people come into our programs and they can come in anonymously if they would like to. So what we do is they have access to courses, and then I teach classes 3 days a week for people. And they can come in, and it's like a Zoom webinar class, and they can ask their questions in the chat, but they can also choose to go on camera and ask out loud. And there was this one individual, and she called herself a different name for the first 2 months she was in there. And then by month 3, she had changed her name. And she's like, this is my real name. This is who I really am. Started coming on camera. And, I won't name names, of course, but she had been through some of the most severe attachment trauma you can go through. Just really, really terrible violations from her father in some of the worst forms. And had really, really difficult attachment wounds, was terrified of relationships, connection, anything. And moved through things so much. And sometimes people will stick around and hang out and do they like the community part of it. So moved through and healed so much. She actually went back to school. She was in sort of the business world and had an MBA, went back to school, became a psychologist, and now works with people on healing their attachment style.
Oh, wow. That is a super success story.
Yeah. And she's just the most lovely person. And it was beautiful because there's sort of you could see the whole shift where she was so private and anonymous, and then shared, and then opened up, and then healed, and then went into doing something where it's now going back to other people, which is so beautiful.
That's amazing. I mean, she's kind of taking what you taught her and teaching other the world now. It sounds like it's contagious in a way. So that's pretty amazing.
Thank you. Yeah,
kind of tell me how people see the difference between love and emotional obsession. Is that common?
Yeah. So there's love, and then there is limerence. So limerence is very much emotional obsession, and limerence is a very interesting thing. And not to, some people don't like my take on this, but to be honest, I'm not sure if I really believe in love at first sight. When we have love at first sight, I do think there can be a spiritual aspect to things for sure. But I think that love at first sight in the vast majority of cases is actually limerence. I'll tell you a story. So I had a client years ago when I was in private practice, and she came in one day, and it was her first session. She said, "Hey, I'm here because I'm thinking of calling off my marriage, my wedding." Oh. And she was engaged, and when I asked her a little bit about her relationship history with this person, it seemed like they had quite a good relationship. Very kind to each other, respectful, had fun together, were together for a decent period of time. I said, so what's going on? Why are you trying to call off the wedding? And she said, well, I think I met this man in a coffee shop the other day, and it was love at first sight. I think he might be my soulmate. And I said, okay, tell me what happened. And she said she was waiting in line at a Starbucks, and somebody knocked her cup, and she spilled it everywhere. And he kind of stood up for her a little bit and said to the person, and then sat with her and cleaned everything up and picked up her stuff and sat with her, and could tell, I think, that she was a little stressed and dysregulated. She was having a stressful day, and sat with her and just chatted with her and asked her she was, and seemed to genuinely check in. And she said, I think that I haven't been able to stop thinking about this person. And if I feel like I'm in love with somebody else, so quickly, how could I possibly go through with the wedding? And she hadn't even exchanged phone numbers with him. We didn't even know where this person was. She kept trying to go return to the Starbucks to run into him. It was a whole thing. So we went into it, and I said, okay, well, in the moment that you had that exchange, what needs did he need for you? And she said, well, he made me feel really seen, we discovered. Yeah. He made me feel protected and supported. But seen was kind of the biggest one by far. And when we looked back at her history in her childhood, she did not feel seen as a child at all. Both of her parents were really unavailable and busy, and there's a large family, and there was never really that a presence and attunement so deeply. And she didn't feel like anybody had her back. So she often felt like she had to kind of do everything on her own, and the weight of the world was on her shoulders. And so then I asked her, well, what about with your fiance? Do you feel like he makes you feel seen and protected? And she said, well, actually, the relationship is excellent in so many ways, but they are not so much. I don't feel like he really makes me feel seen and protected. And I said, okay, before you call off your wedding for the next 4 weeks, we're going to go through you talking about how you need to be seen. We're going to create, actual activities together in your relationship where you sit, you ask meaningful questions to each other, you're present, you're attuned, and you're going to see how much he really makes you feel seen and knows you. You're going to ask him to have your back more, give him examples. And she did that. And by week 3, she was like, what was I thinking? Like, why was I
Yeah.
thinking of calling off my marriage? And so when we get into emotional obsession, aka limerence, what's actually happening is that we usually have deeply unmet needs that we're wired for, that we didn't get access to in childhood. That then as an adult, when somebody meets them, it's like fireworks that go off in the brain. And we
Yeah.
often think that we're emotionally obsessed with a person, but it's like usually dynamics with limerence or an emotional obsession where we don't even know the person. Like, how often do we see things where people are emotionally obsessed with a movie character or emotionally obsessed with somebody they met just at the coffee shop for 5 minutes? It's because that's not really love. Love is truly getting to know somebody and their inner
Yeah.
world and merging your inner worlds collectively together and understanding them. And limerence and emotional obsession are very much peak attraction and infatuation over shorter periods of time. And really what we're obsessing about is not the person, but the needs that they represent to our subconscious mind that we're starving for.
So when people are in love and they cheat, why does that happen, do you think? Just because of something that happened in their past?
That's an excellent question. So, as somebody who worked with a lot of people in this dynamic, roughly 10% of people cheat for pathological reasons. So sex
Okay.
addiction, narcissistic personality disorder. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter how great their partner was going to be for them. Like if somebody has narcissistic personality disorder, they're highly likely to cheat because they need to fill that inner void with attention and feeling wanted and feeling important. And that's a deeply rooted then issue. The rest of the 90% of people, they cheat because they have deeply unmet needs. Okay. They usually don't know how to communicate about them. And then
Mm.
over time, they become resentful of their partner because their partner was supposed to be their spouse or my partner. They're supposed to be meeting my needs.
Yeah.
And then that resentment opens this window for justification and rationalization. And they start thinking outside of the relationship or wondering or missing something. They know they feel incomplete. And the subconscious mind is a needs meeting machine. And then what eventually ends up happening in the cases of people that cheat is somebody comes in to their life and they meet those needs. So maybe there's a new coworker in the office space and
Yeah.
your spouse has made you feel unseen and not noticed for the last 7 years. And that person makes you feel special and noticed and prioritized and wanted. And somebody's brain lights up. And then if they already resent their partner and they don't know how to work through conflicts or they don't know how to communicate what they need and they're already feeling that distance, often the rationalization kicks in and it's like, well, it would be okay. Well, my partner doesn't care anyways. Well, and so I've often found in the rest of the 90% of cases, it follows that same trajectory where there's this sort of slow burn of deeply unmet needs, long period of time, rationalization. Somebody comes and meets the needs. And then all of a sudden, we end up in that kind of dynamic.
I mean, how many marriages have you saved? You must have saved so many people, by helping them with this, like with
Yeah.
what you're teaching them. I mean,
Thank
that's
you. Yeah.
that's
And also
must
a lot.
feel amazing.
And it's beautiful too. Like, I mean, I just loved working with people so much and still love it so much. But it's beautiful too because sometimes and I'll be the first person to say that I feel like if I was cheated on in my marriage, I would probably, I've always said since I was young, like, oh, if that ever happened, it would be a non-negotiable for me. I wouldn't try to do the work. But I also really respect that people do. And I really value that. I think that that's a beautiful thing. And I don't think there's ever a right or wrong answer. Like, who knows? My mind could change if something like that happened. But I don't think there's a really right or wrong answer. And some people don't really have a choice sometimes. Sometimes they have to, if they were cheated on already, sometimes they say because they have a mortgage and 3 kids and they can't afford
Yeah.
to separate or they don't want to put their children through that. There's so many reasons. But when you look at cheating and you understand it from that lens, what often happens is people are truly invested. Both people have to be invested to do the work.
Yeah.
When people do get cheated on, there is infidelity, they go into like the deepest unmet needs, like what led there, what was the root cause. And then the person who's cheated on goes into their deepest unmet needs from being cheated on and also their longstanding unmet needs in that marriage. And if both people are willing and committed over time, even though the V1, version 1 of their relationship is torn apart, they often rebuild a better V2 because cheating is often a symptom of all of these problems beneath the surface that weren't being dug up and addressed. And it forces you to, if you're going to work on it, you got to go to all the root cause and figure out all the unmet needs and learn to communicate about needs and learn to be there and meet each other's. And it builds this sense of deeper connection in a really meaningful way. And then that's how we rebuild trust and dynamics. And so it's a very difficult thing for people to go through, but even on the capacity to work through it, if people decide that, it's possible to really rebuild as well.
I mean, I've have not been cheated on, and well, I haven't, and I'm like you, where if that's a non-negotiable for me, if I was cheated on, like I would be done. And I just wonder how people and the reason why I say that is because, like, even if I could, like, okay, it was a one-time thing, it happened, like, I'll forgive you for it. I feel like I would never have that trust again, or I would never be able to kinda get past it. So are you helping people kinda build that trust again and be able to rewire themselves to get past this?
Yeah. So it's a really interesting topic. So there's a lot of things that people say in the world, and I really find them to be like surface level things. So somebody will say, just love yourself,
Yeah,
or just forgive them, or just trust them. Just you're just gonna have to choose to trust. And it's like, okay, that would be nice if when somebody says
yeah,
love yourself and you don't love yourself, if you could figure out what that actually felt like, or if
yeah,
oh forgive them, but you don't feel forgiveness in your heart yet, like what? And so sometimes we intellectualize things because we don't have the understanding of how to actually arrive there at a deeper level, and a lot of that involves the subconscious mind. And trust, in my opinion, people say time heals all wounds. No way. Like wounds can go on for a very long time. What
yeah,
has to happen, and I actually would guide people through this process. I work with people in a lot of different capacities, but this has definitely been one of them. And what ends up happening is for trust to be rebuilt, and it's a painful process, but it's the alchemy of it, is that for trust to be rebuilt when somebody's cheated on, the person who got cheated on needs to know exactly why. And sometimes that's a really hard conversation. But if somebody tells you I cheated and I don't know why, then it was a random thing and it can randomly happen again. But if
yeah,
somebody cheated on you and they say to you and they have to have the conversation, and it can be, we have to be really careful with how we have the conversation because it can be received as blame. But if somebody says, hey, I cheated because I have a big love language for physical touch, and that's how I feel loved. And that wasn't a part of our marriage for the last 6 years. And I felt alone and I felt isolated. And then I resented you and I justified my actions and I was messed up and I was wrong. But like that's a huge part of it. Well, now this person who just got cheated on, they can decide if they think that they can help course correct for root cause. They can decide, and it's not going to be something they start tomorrow after this just happened, but they can decide now there's a cause and effect. And so now there's some kind of like control there. It's like, okay, you didn't just cheat because that's your character and you can do it anytime. There was a root problem and we didn't address it and it led to this outcome. So now at least I know the why. And now I can decide if I want to help course correct the why. And I know that that's going to be the antidote to the likelihood of that happening again. So now trust can actually be rebuilt from that lens if people choose. Now, the person who got cheated on also has to turn around and say, when you cheated on me,
yeah,
these are all the things that came up and all the unmet needs. And then what has to actually happen for trust to be built is we need these more surface things. Like we need consistency, we need consideration, we need transparency in the relationship. We need, a lot of actual productive dynamics where it's like, okay, no passwords on phones. We're going to spend time together. We're going to, there has to be this openness, of course, to
yeah.
facilitate that. But at a deeper level, there has to be the deep understanding of what needs were shattered, both prior to cheating and after the cheating happened, and then the making their way back to each other to meet one another's needs again there. And if we're doing that, we're doing actual root cause work, and that's how we can come full circle and break through it. If we're not doing that, then people just end up saying, just trust them again, just stay, just
Yeah,
blindly trust.
yeah.
And then they're always looking over their shoulder. And that's not a healthy way to be.
What do you think the biggest lie people believe about relationships and love?
That if you just love somebody enough, it can work. And I feel like that's like the the cynical
Yeah,
answer, but love is not enough. Love is a beautiful thing, but I have seen so many people who love each other so much, who have a lot of stuff from childhood, who were not willing to do the work. One partner wasn't willing to do the work, or both people, and they can love, but if you can't communicate and if you can't talk about your needs, if you can't be vulnerable in a relationship so that you can connect to each other more deeply, if you can't get there, then love just ends up being a whole set of feelings that eventually fades away into resentment and frustration and anger. And
yeah.
so love is a really beautiful thing, but also we have to dig way deeper into that. And we have to have productive ways of relating to each other in order for a relationship to truly work.
Yeah, I mean, I have, friends that well, they're not a couple anymore, they were a couple, and they just kept breaking up and getting back together, breaking up and getting back together, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
"What are you doing?" And even still that I mean, they're talking about getting back together again. I'm like, "What is going on here?" Like, you've tried this so many times, like and the reason why they're doing it is because they're alone and they're scared to be alone, and they keep wanting to like try to make it because I don't know. It just it's insanity to me that because they're so unhappy when they're together, and then they
Yeah.
just keep going back. So
And also, what's happening when that happens is people have big core wounds. We all have these core wounds, kind of like the bear in the woods thing. So maybe one
yeah,
person fears being abandoned or alone. Maybe another person feels trapped very easily and needs distance. We usually have core wounds, and then we get into a relationship and they set each other off. We often have what we call trigger patterns in relationships, where one person's core wound, exactly how they behave when the core wound comes up or is activated, tends to re-trigger the other person's core wound, and how they behave re-triggers the first person. So they go around in a cycle. So for example, if you take somebody who's more anxious in a relationship and somebody who's more
yeah,
avoidant, the anxious person usually has a big wound of being abandoned, and the avoidant person needs more space. So right away, when they need more space, the anxious person says, "You're going to abandon me." How they behave when they feel that way is to cling. When they feel clung on to, the avoidant then goes, "Oh my gosh, I'm trapped." And how they behave is to push away, which then re-triggers the abandonment wound. And then they cling, and then the person feels trapped, and they create space. So they go in this vicious cycle. And these are
yeah,
usually the relationships that are the most volatile, right? They're like hot, cold, off, on, because they're triggering each other so much. But then on the flip side, they usually do have some kind of deep needs that they're meeting for each other, which
mm,
magnetizes them back. So like we talked about with the limerence and emotional obsession, like maybe that person, even though they make you feel trapped, they still make you feel seen. Or even that person makes you feel abandoned, they make you feel special when they are around. And so usually you have these deeply unmet needs from childhood that the person's meeting. So you have this really strong draw towards them. But then you have these big triggers from childhood the person's pushing on. And so you get these really
yeah.
strong hot and cold and back and forth dynamics. And it makes for a perfect storm where we're going to see people go through these makeup breakup cycles like crazy.
And we'll be right back. Okay, now back to the show. Do you think are people like connecting because of chemistry or because of the wounds that they've had, or both?
Both.
Both.
Chemistry. So the things that drive attraction at the subconscious level are three things, and two of them are short term and one is more long term. So there's three major ways that we become attracted. So obviously there's like the biological stuff, we know that,
Yeah.
but I'm talking like purely psychological. So one is we are attracted to people who meet our deeply unmet needs from childhood. Okay, so
Hmm.
for example, like we talked about, somebody makes you feel seen, you never felt seen, your brain lights up. We know that. Number two is, interestingly, we are also attracted to people who express our repressed traits. So this is like
Okay.
trait variety, and this comes through biologically and evolutionarily. So if you are really smart and somebody's really strong and you pair up together to survive in the wild, you have a better chance at surviving. And so
Okay.
we're wired to be attracted to people who are very different than us. It's where you hear like opposites attract, because
Yeah. Yeah.
if we pair up, we have more access to surviving. So that's the second thing. And then the third thing, and this is what we invest in long term, is we invest in what feels familiar, because we equate familiarity to safety and thus survival. And this is where it gets
Yeah.
really interesting, is that what's most familiar to us is the way that we treat ourselves. So this is part of why you see, for example, people who are more anxious in relationships, they're
Yeah.
usually people pleasing. So they're usually kind of dismissing and avoiding their own feelings and needs because they're busy focusing on others.
Yeah.
And so even though consciously they might say, I want the emotionally available person who's ready for a relationship, subconsciously, which their subconscious mind is running the show, they want the person who feels most familiar. And who is that? That's literally the person who's going to dismiss and avoid them, because that's what they do to self. And so sometimes when we go into these dynamics or relationships where we feel like there's this chemistry, a lot of times that's a pull from one of these three things. But oftentimes, those pulls are also not always the healthiest version of what we want to be investing in long term.
Yeah.
Because if we are treating ourselves in unhealthy ways, then we'll be pulled towards people who mirror that back to us. And until we learn to rewire that in ourselves, we'll keep repeating those cycles.
And I have another couple that I know, and they have a healthy relationship, but one of them I think is always trying to sabotage the relationship in some ways. And I'm thinking this is going to break one day where it's just going to end. And I've talked to them. I mean, to the most part, they are happy together. But one of them does things all the time that it's just like sabotaging is really the word I think I would use for the relationship that this one person is doing. And it's constant, and I don't know why.
Do you feel comfortable sharing the, like, obviously not their names or personal information, but like the behavior that you see as sabotaging? Like, or always push them away, or they shut down, or they stonewall, or they say negative things about their partner? Like, what is
Yeah,
the
so they say, if we're at dinner, they will make, you know, I joke around, with my partner and say we joke around about things, but there's a limit to it when you're joking around and whenever you start hurting somebody's feelings.
I
And whenever we're at dinner, sometimes it's just like the constant jabs and talking about how they weren't successful at this for their job and stuff. And it's just like, it gets really, you could see the other person's face, just like, you could
yeah,
feel like I feel so horrible for them because they are like being abused. But then like the next time we see them, they're like happy and they love each other. They said, "Oh, we had such a great weekend," and you'll hear like how amazing they were together. And I've asked my friend like, "Why do you do that? Like, why are you always like just putting him down in front of us?" They're like, "No, I don't do that really." I'm like, "I'm telling you, you do." Like, and you can see his face that you are doing it, and like it's hurting his feelings. Like, why? And they
yeah.
just they just won't admit it.
And so what happens is everything we do, and I'm not excusing that because that's not good behavior at all.
Yeah,
But it's so interesting to understand like the neuroscience of it. So everything we do is a subconscious strategy to get specific needs met and to avoid core wounds. So for example, you could see so let's say the one guy he puts his partner down, right? So
yeah,
he's sitting
yeah,
there, puts his partner down. If you look, even though it's not okay, it might be a subconscious strategy to make himself feel better about himself or make his partner feel insecure so his partner doesn't want to leave him. And so then he feels like he has a sense of control. So that could be one version of it, for example. And
I think
then,
it could be both of those things. Actually, I think you just hit the nail on the head. Like seriously, because I
yeah,
think I think you actually, that's absolutely right. What you just said. I think
yeah.
both of those reasons are the reasons why.
And then what's so interesting is then he would sit there and say, well, his partner, why doesn't his partner leave or get angry? Well, maybe his partner on the receiving end is sitting there saying, well, I'm scared of being abandoned. And I have to pretend like this is okay with me because I don't want to be, causing a fight and then getting abandoned. And so he might bypass his own feelings in that situation
Yeah,
and repress his own needs in the situation as a subconscious strategy to get the need met for connection. And so then he doesn't speak up. The partner keeps doing it, gets the control and inflation of his sense of ego or sense of self. And then they're in this kind of dynamic where they're both playing out those patterns together because it meets needs for both of them, even
yeah,
though it's in the most dysfunctional way.
yeah. Is the stress of like what's happening in this crazy world today, is that also like driving people to have all this anxiety and stress that's being brought into relationships? Because I mean, if you watch the news for even 5 minutes a day, it's all so negative and and I just feel like there's just so much horrible things that are happening. And I don't know, I just feel like everybody's got at that stress right now in their life that's, coming from all the world
Absolutely.
events that's happening.
Yeah. So whenever we have those things, so like even going back to that couple that you mentioned, and they put each other down and they don't say anything.
Yeah.
When we understand the wire, we can change it. We can go get the needs met in new forms, right? We can get needs for connection met through better boundaries and getting seen and
Yeah.
letting them treat us better. We can get, part of what our goal becomes is once we understand it to then update the ways we get the needs met and to rewire the core wounds that are keeping us in these cycles, like these fears of abandonment that we carry so tightly that we put up with everything. And
Yeah.
that carries over into things like the news. So what's really interesting is like people will go, and even if the news makes them feel bad, they may keep going back to watching the news because they get a sense of certainty from it. They get a sense of like, oh, then I know what's happening in the world. So it usually meets needs, but it could also trigger wounds. It might make them feel
Yeah.
trapped or helpless or powerless in the world at the same time. And so what I like to do is, I think that when you look at all the things happening in the world, it's very easy for them to take away your sense of agency.
Yeah.
Because especially if you have trapped wounds or helplessness wounds, it's so easy to be like, the world is so big and I am so small. What could I possibly do? And then you feel
Hmm.
like you're in learned helplessness, and then that feels terrible. And then, then that comes out into other ways, into your relationships or interactions. And so what's really meaningful is like when there's something difficult, we have to find our sense of agency first. And so in this case, if it's what's happening in the world, first thing is, well, why is that triggering me as a human? Okay. Logically, there's going to be lots of good reasons, but like, what is it? What do I make that situation I see on the television mean about me? And when we ask that question, we can discover what the fear is. Oh, that I'm trapped, or I'm helpless, or I'm unsafe in the
Yeah.
world. Everything's scary. Okay, good. So now that we know that that's a fear, we have to source some kind of agency. Well, where can I find my freedom? Because I'm feeling like it's being taken away. Where can I find my freedom? Maybe I think of an exit plan if I need to. Maybe I go into it. Maybe I try to choose a career path where I have more flexibility and freedom in different ways. Because the subconscious mind, it just wants its needs met. It doesn't really care about the form. So if something makes you feel really trapped in the world, but then you have a really free career and relationships, honor your freedom and all these things, you're not going to be suffering too much in the same way. So we want to look at like, what is this actually affecting me in? And how can I sort those things in different ways? And then the second thing is I think it's really important to be like, well, listen, if I don't like what's happening in the world, how can I be part of the solution instead of just getting and learn helplessness and then just as a byproduct and part of the problem? And part of the solution is a drop in the bucket in the solution. No one person's going to come and save the world. Superheroes are not a real thing in real life.
Yeah.
And so we want to be like, okay, well, what can I do to be a part of the solution in whatever way that looks for me, in a way that feels viable, in a way that doesn't burn me out? Because sometimes we think of all the things in the world and I have to fix all of it, or I should change everything. And it's like, well, it doesn't work like that. And if we had everybody just figure out how they were triggered, work through that trigger by sourcing the opposite of that thing. If you feel powerless, well, where do you have personal power or empowerment? How can you build that or create more of that in your life? If you feel trapped, where is your freedom? How can you make sure you honor your freedom in your life and make space for it in whatever way that looks? And then how can it be a small part of the solution instead of the problem? Then suddenly you have agency again. And then, yes, the outside world is happening. But if everybody were to work through their triggers so they don't bring it into the relationships or bring it into their conversations with people who might have a different opinion, or bring it into all their dating dynamics, well, now we're better as humans. And then when we look at, what sustainable things can we do to be part of the solution? Well, now we come out of the triggering space all the time. We start moving towards solutions, and it makes it a lot easier. So I think that for sure, there's a lot of chaos happening. That's undeniable. But it's like, how do we mitigate the impact that chaos has on us? And I think that's a good way to approach it.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. Okay, now back to the show. Do you teach people how to kind of create boundaries also in the relationships? Just because, I think there's sometimes people don't set boundaries the right way, or they do and the other person doesn't really, I don't know,
respond to them well.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like I'm like telling all my friends' secrets on this podcast, but I think they all need to go to your classes for this.
So it's such a great question, and I'm sorry, were you finished your question there? Were you going to say
no? Yeah,
else?
I just wanted to because I have another couple that I think they try to set boundaries with things and neither one of them follow it, or follow through with it. So it's very, yeah.
So I always say to people, when you're setting a boundary, the first thing you want to do is you want to use a very regulated tone with a very strong language. So when someone sets a boundary and they yell, they say, "How dare you? Don't ever do that again." And they yell.
Yeah.
The person on the receiving end just hears that you're yelling at them. They don't hear what your boundary is.
Yeah.
If instead you're the opposite and you say, "Well, that's a boundary for me. Can you please try your best to remember? And it's okay if you don't, but please try." Or somebody says, "Oh, if you don't mind, can you please," then it's like you're trying to close all the doors to your house, but you leave all the windows open for somebody to get in. It's not setting a boundary. So we want really strong language and a really regulated tone so people can hear you because you're not dysregulated, and you have strong language. So that looks like saying something like, "Hey, what just happened a moment ago is completely unacceptable. It cannot happen again. Do you understand?" And now you're speaking in just a very normalized way where somebody really hears that this is a boundary, but you're not picking a fight. You're just using very closed language. Unacceptable, cannot happen again. Are we clear? Very assertive language, very regulated tone. So that's the first way to start with our boundaries. The second thing is I always say to people, like, if you're setting your boundaries and you're doing it in that way, and somebody keeps coming back and violating the boundaries, there does have to come a point where you're no longer setting boundaries in situations. You're instead setting boundaries with people. Because if you're around somebody and they keep violating your boundaries, well, at that point, you're just violating your own boundaries by staying near them because you already know that that's how they're going to show up. So I say to people like, look, try setting boundaries in the situation. Like if you don't like how they speak to you, address it. If you
Yeah.
don't like that they're always doing something unhealthy, good, address it. But if you keep addressing it and the person still doesn't respect your boundaries, well, then you have to decide that I'm going to take a big step back in that relationship, set a boundary with the person altogether rather than in the situational events, because I know they're going to violate them anyways. And so then
Yeah.
your boundary becomes with the person instead of in the situation.
And so it sounds like you could probably rewire really anybody that has an issue with, not feeling secure. Do you agree with that? Like you could,
Yeah,
I mean,
that's the whole goal. So I will say this, the person has to be willing to do the work because there's a little bit of
yeah.
work involved, right? You need a lot of repetition and emotion across time. So for example, I'll give a first tool, for example, on every pillar. So all those pillars, the wounds, the needs, the nervous system, the boundaries, the
Yeah.
communication, that all has to be done at the subconscious level, which means we need repetition and emotion across time to fire and wire those neural networks in our brain. So it becomes our set point. But for example, if we're trying to rewire a wound, the first tool I give to people to begin is, let's say you have a wound where you believe I'm not good enough. Okay, maybe your parents were really critical as a kid. They might have had
Okay.
really good intentions to prepare you for the world, but you believe I am not good enough. So now you go through life and you project that onto everything. Okay, and then maybe that makes you a chronic people pleaser. So we got to go in and we got to pluck that weed out at the root. So the first thing, if we're trying to change that belief system at a subconscious level, is we need to find that belief and then its opposite. So I have this wound, I'm not good enough. What's the opposite? I am good enough. Step 2, I now need to be able to speak to my subconscious mind because that's where the problem is.
Okay.
I don't believe in affirmations because affirmations are your conscious mind speaking to your conscious mind. And nobody wakes up and consciously says, today I'm going to tell myself 38 times that I'm not good enough. So it's a subconscious problem. And so the conscious mind speaks language and the subconscious mind speaks in emotions and imagery. So if I were to say to you, okay, whatever you do not think of a pink elephant. Like, hello, you probably flashed an image of a pink elephant.
Yes.
Your conscious mind hears do not, but your subconscious speaks in images. It just flashed an image of a pink elephant. Like, how do you miss that? And so now what ends up taking place is we have to actually speak in emotions and images in order to reach the subconscious mind. So how do we do that? Well, every memory we ever have is just a container for emotions and imagery. And so if I were to say, okay, what's your favorite childhood memory? And you said, oh, it's playing at the beach. You would see the images of the sand and the ocean.
Yeah.
You might see the image of the red sand bucket as you're building a sand castle as a kid. And we've all seen people when they recall old memories, they laugh or they smile, or if it's a sad one, they cry. Because all memory contains emotion. So now we know that if we want emotion and imagery, we can leverage memory. So step 1 was, I am not good enough. I am good enough. Right? We find its opposite. Step 2 is, I now need 10 memories of times I actually felt good enough. And that can be anything. It can be in any of the areas of life, in career, around money, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, relationships. So we look for, I felt good enough 3 days ago when I had a hard conversation with my boss. And I felt proud of that, somebody might say. Or I felt good enough when I was a really good friend to somebody in need a couple weeks ago. So we're trying to come up with memories of times we actually did feel good enough because A, it's evidence-based, it's real. B, you're in a dynamic now where you're sitting there and you're actually soliciting or eliciting emotions and imagery at the subconscious level. And we need 10 of them for repetition. Repetition fires and wires. So now we've gone step 1, I'm not good enough, I am good enough. Step 2, 10 memories of times I did feel good enough. Now I'm speaking into my subconscious mind. And step 3 is we need to record ourselves saying this out loud. And ideally, we want to listen back for 21 days. Research shows that it takes roughly 63 days to rewire a total behavior. But when we're trying to rewire a belief system and we're in a suggestible state, meaning our brain's producing more alpha brain waves, it's usually the first hour that we wake up, the last hour we go to bed, after meditation, breath work, things like that. Our brain is highly suggestible, which means our subconscious mind is sponging up information more quickly. So 21 days, we're in a suggestible state, and we're really feeling, when we listen back to this evidence of how we are good enough, we're really feeling it in our body as much as we can. And we're really visualizing those memories as much as we can. And now what we're doing is it takes 2 to 5 minutes a day to listen back. First thing you wake up, you snooze your alarm for 5 minutes and you listen, you play your recording. I was good enough. This is bliss. it's emotions, it's imagery. Okay, and then this, emotions, imagery, we're feeling it in our body. You're getting that information down at a subconscious level, and we're refiring and wiring across time new neural networks that oppose that original core wound. Because you're not born with these core wounds. They get wired into you that way. Now we're just wiring them out. So that's one example of a tool to really change those belief systems that tend to wreak a lot of havoc on our lives.
So how many people do you think you've helped over the years?
I've seen a lot of people because we've had a lot of people. So I worked in client-based practice for a total of, I want to say it was going on 10 years by the time I retired it and went into just purely the online space. And I saw roughly like 30 people a week, 40 people a week for quite some time. And then did a lot of workshops. And then since moving into the online space, we've had 60,000 people come through our programs.
Wow. Isn't that amazing? I mean, don't you feel so proud of that? Like how you've helped that many people?
I feel like I'm like on this really big mission. I should probably pause and feel more about that. But I want so badly for people because I suffered so much at one point from this stuff and my wounds and my childhood stuff. And I want like my goal is like every household just knows about their subconscious mind and how it works and how to rewire their painful patterns because it just really opens the world up. But yeah, thank you.
You really should. You should pause though and think about that, like about how you've helped 60,000 people improve their lives. I mean, that's amazing. Like we need more of that in the world, like, so.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
If people want to get in touch with you, they would go to personaldevelopmentschool.com. Is that the best way to get in?
Yeah. And they can take a free attachment quiz. There's like an attachments test. They can find their attachments, all their wounds, they'll learn their needs, all that good stuff.
Yeah. And I will put the link of the website in the description of this video or podcast, whatever you're listening. So click on it. And I'm on the website now. I see the free attachment quiz right on the homepage, and it's a great website. So
thank you. Thank you so much for having me and for chatting. This is such a fun conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, I think you'll probably get a lot of. Like I said, I just added a bunch of my friends, so probably most of my friends will start getting in contact with you for the help. So, thank you so much for being on. You're amazing. If this episode resonates with you or with somebody you know, please be sure to share it. And again, go to personaldevelopmentschool.com and check out the website because there's a lot of good information on there. So, thanks again for being on. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so fun.